Okay, we might just jump into it for the sake of time. We do have 45 minutes booked today, but we do have a lot of content to cover. So we're just going to jump on into it. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our effective AI prompting webinar. And as mentioned, we are recording today's session, so feel free to have your camera on or off, and the recording will be made available after the session and included on the library AI How Do I Guide webinar collection. So I just want to first acknowledge that I am presenting on Ghana land today, and I want to acknowledge their leaders past, present, and emerging. Feel free to share in the chat what lands you are on today if you are aware. If not, if you're not aware, that's fine, but I highly recommend looking at the Indigenous map of Australia to familiarise yourself. And there is a link in the chat that Rani has shared today. So my name is Brendan Robinson, and I'm the Coordinator for Artificial Intelligence and Digital Literacy here at the University Library. I will provide these contact details again later in the session, but if you wanted to contact me, you can do so using the email address on the screen. So this is what we're going to cover today. You have joined the Effective AI Prompting webinar, but this is a bit of a breakdown of what we'll actually cover. We'll do a broad introduction to prompting. We will look at what constitutes a clear and a specific prompt. We'll look at tailoring prompts to audiences. And lastly, we'll finish with some prompting frameworks to assist you with your AI prompting. The main aim of today is to try and give you some AI prompting skills that you can take away and apply to your relevant context. It's not a one solution for everything type of session, but rather a session to give you some tools and get you thinking. So we'll also really just focus on the prompting itself, and we won't get into too many of the technical details of AI models too much. We have booked in 45 minutes today, and we're going to try and keep to that. However, we may end up going a bit longer, depending on how many questions and type of things that we get. So my view of the chat is a little bit limited today, but please feel free to contribute in the chat and chat with each other and share ideas, and we will get to it. And you can either that, or you can hold your questions to the end of the session, where we will open it up for more questions towards the end. So let's get into it. We'll just start with some context first. So we're going to go through what is AI. So AI, it describes the ability for a computer to do something we'd normally associate with human intelligence. It's mimicking what we have as our real human intelligence. We talk and can communicate with language. We reason, we problem solve daily. We all have our own perceptions formed from our lived experiences and learning. We're also creative, even if we don't believe we are. We all think and create things daily without realizing. AI attempts to mimic this without having a true understanding of what it is doing. The impact of this technology has been transformative. Just consider how you interacted with technology a decade ago compared to today. So from voice assistants that understand our commands to recommendation systems that seem to know our preferences, AI has this increasing influence on our daily lives. So the big part of AI that we want to focus on today is generative AI. Generative AI has brought unprecedented public attention to AI capabilities. ChatGPT is one of the world's most recognized brands and has almost become the verb for using generative AI. You might have heard someone say, just ChatGPT it. Let's explore what that actually means. We're not actually endorsing any specific tools here today. We're really just showing what the process of interacting with generative AI is, regardless of what generative AI tool is being used. So on screen, you can see where generative AI fits into the AI ecosystem. Now, this is a really simplified overview of it. We could spend hours going over this, but for now, this is just a platform for you to build your AI literacy skills from. So generative AI really represents the cutting edge of what AI can do, creating new content rather than just analyzing existing content. These systems learn patterns from vast amounts of training data and can generate new text, images, or other content that follows these patterns. However, they're essentially making sophisticated predictions based on patterns they've seen. They don't truly understand or reason like humans do. It's predictive in nature. The data that these models are trained on can also be questionable, as it's essentially data scraped from the internet as a whole, which includes things like social media and forum posts, rather than just purely accurate information. There's also issues with representation in the data, which is often influenced by a Western viewpoint. Even though some models can access data in real time, the understanding of that data still has issues. The speed of response and volume of information generative AI can produce makes AI tools appear smarter than they actually are. They are powerful tools, but their outputs should always be verified and critically analyzed by human experts. AI will confidently answer things incorrectly. Sometimes it just gets it wrong. Sometimes it's about the prompt. The QR code on the screen will take you to our masterclass in generative AI, which includes webinars and other AI resources that provide more detail than we're going to cover today. I highly recommend that you view that alongside this webinar. This is almost building on that and a value add to that existing content. I believe you can use the QR code, and Rani has also shared the link in the chat. So before we dive into prompting techniques, let's address the most important question for us today. Can you even use AI in your coursework? So the University of Adelaide has established guidelines regarding AI use in academic work, which you can find by using the QR code on screen or, again, the link in the chat. However, these policies may be implemented differently across courses and disciplines. So your first step must always be to consult with your course coordinator about whether AI tools are permitted in your specific assignments. For example, some courses may allow AI for brainstorming, but not for final submission. Others might require disclosure of AI use, and some may prohibit AI entirely. You can't use it at all in some cases. So just remember that using AI tools without permission or proper attribution could constitute academic misconduct. So when in doubt, ask first, because academic integrity remains fundamental, regardless of the tools at your disposal. Really just need to stress that point before we go into all this. You need to be certain about whether you can actually use AI in your assignments. We're going to talk broadly, so you can use this even outside of your academic work. Okay, let's start with the fundamentals. What exactly is prompting generative AI? So prompting is the method that we use to communicate with generative AI systems. Although it's not limited to text, it generally is the text-based input, things like the questions, the instructions, or the context that we provide to guide the AI in generating an appropriate response. This could be as simple as asking a question or as complex as providing detailed specifications for a creative project. The relationship between prompts and outputs is crucial to understand. There is a direct correlation between the quality of your prompt and the quality of the AI's response. Clear, specific prompts tend to generate more precise and useful outputs, while vague or ambiguous prompts often lead to generic or off-target responses. To put it simply, you only get out what you put in. A poorly structured prompt forces the AI to guess what you need, leading to unhelpful or misleading results. Clear, specific prompts lead to better, more relevant answers. So we're mainly going to focus on large language AI models today, as that seems to be where the main impact in the academic world is. But these principles also apply to things like image generators, music generators, and other AI models. Just going to have a look again, just really reiterating about how Gen AI understands prompts. So just to really better understand prompting, we needed to have a quick look under the hood of generative AI. So I mentioned before that generative AI doesn't truly understand in the way humans do. Instead, it just uses complex language models trained on massive amounts of data to predict and generate relevant responses. So when you provide a Gen AI tool with a prompt, it doesn't simply retrieve the information. It generates this new text based on these patterns. This means the way that you phrase your request or your prompt directly impacts the output. It's like ordering food at a restaurant. If you're vague, you might not get what you want, right? So we're actually seeing a new digital literacy skill emerging as AI develops, which is effective AI prompting. It's sometimes referred to as prompt engineering. It's much like being able to search effectively online, like knowing how to refine a Google search to improve results. Crafting clear and specific AI prompts helps generate those accurate and useful responses, much like a more refined search gives you more relevant information. Just stressing again, the AI is trying to predict the most likely and relevant responses based on the context you provide. Your job as a prompter or prompt engineer is to guide that prediction as precisely as possible. And because of that predictive nature, generative AI can sometimes answer incorrectly while appearing quite confident in its response. And this is referred to as a hallucination. So hallucinations occur because AI, like I mentioned, AI isn't retrieving those facts from a database. It just doesn't have the correct answers. It's predicting basically what should come next based on those patterns. You can see I'm really reiterating that. And those patterns are learned during its training. And it really means that it can result in things like fabricated citations, made up statistics, or blending of different concepts. Sometimes it's even just basic errors, like I'm going to show you in a moment. While these AI models are constantly improving, verification of their outputs remains essential, especially in academic work. Always fact check AI outputs against reliable sources of information, especially before incorporating them into your assignments. If you're even allowed to do that, remember, you have to double check if you're allowed to do that. And they're always getting better, but the verification of these outputs is always essential still, even as they improve. So that is also another digital literacy skill that is developing as AI develops, and that is a verification of AI outputs, using your critical thinking skills to verify it. So we're seeing not only prompting as a skill, but verifying the outputs as a skill. Now, I'm mentioning hallucinations now because they exist in most AI models and sometimes happen regardless of how effective your prompting is. So I'm going to show you a couple of basic examples of this, and you may be able to reproduce these under similar conditions, although results can vary. I'd also love to hear about hallucination examples that you've encountered in your own experiences. So please share them in the chat so others can also learn from them too. Speaking of that chat, I'm just going to pop in, make sure we're all good. Thank you, Rani. Okay. As mentioned, while these AI models and systems are constantly getting better, you still need to be aware that all these outputs need to be verified. So this on screen is an example of a hallucination that I show regularly. I actually couldn't recreate these on my own accounts anymore, which shows that there is this unexplainability to these tools, and they actually do improve over time as well. However, I did manage to replicate this on someone else's device in last month, basically. So some things to note, which I've highlighted. This is using ChatGPT. We are not logged into an account, which sometimes will give you better access to certain models. But have a quick read of this thread. Basically, what we're doing is we're asking the question of how many letter R's are in strawberry, the word strawberry or raspberry. So you can actually see here that the AI has confidently told us that the words raspberry and strawberry only contain 2-letter R's. We know there are 3 though, right? So this is a perfect example of a hallucination in its most basic form. But imagine doing something more complex though. Like it might be hard to identify the issue if there was a lot more content. And that's why human critical thinking is of the utmost importance and why you shouldn't blindly rely on AI. You can see even ChatGPT is acknowledging it can make mistakes down the bottom there too. So we continue on the same trend here. We're back using ChatGPT. We're not logged in still. We have asked the question of the AI as to why it sometimes gives us different answers. Sometimes it's 2 R's, sometimes it actually gets it right and says 3 R's. So you can actually see in its response, there's now actually further confusion. It states there's only 1 R in this word, and it confidently backs in its thinking too, and gives the assurance that it can fix mistakes it pointed out. But after viewing this, can it really? How do you feel about it? Oh, sorry, just I went a bit ahead there. So how do you feel about it? This isn't to talk down the benefits of these tools, of course. It's just something to be aware of, and that blind reliance on these tools can lead to issues. It's not a shortcut to learning or writing things, but it's a tool to help you with your learning and study, to augment it. I actually think it's one of the best tools to develop critical thinking skills that we have. Um, when we just take its word as truth, it leads to bigger issues, and it even impacts the perception of AI tools as a whole for some. So why am I showing this? It's because knowing the limitations of the tools can help you work around these issues. Good prompting can assist in avoiding these issues, which is why it's important to build that skill. However, sometimes you can only control so much. So I did mention that while it's not a guarantee that good prompting can assist in avoiding hallucinations, there is ways that it can. So here is an example of how a precise prompt can change the outcome. We'll refer back to that previous hallucination here. We're prompting the AI to look at the word strawberry more carefully and breaking it down to assess it letter by letter. With these precise and structured instructions, you can see that it has now given us the correct answer. And this is just an example of why effective AI prompting is a crucial skill. It's not just about catching AI out, making mistakes, but more so using further thinking skills to see if you could improve the prompt for a better outcome. It's a combination of thinking critically about the AI outputs, but then also thinking logically to structure a prompt. While this is a very simple and basic example, it still applies to more complex use cases, but it's just one that I like to show off to set the scene. So we're going to move now into how to craft clear and specific prompts more broadly. We already mentioned along these lines, and you'll hear me repeat some of this messaging because there's some messaging I really want you to take away from today. So the consequences of imprecise communication can cause issues regardless of the use of generative AI. So just imagine you're planning a trip and you ask a travel agent, plan me a vacation, just broadly. Without any additional details, you might end up with a beach getaway in the Caribbean when you were hoping for a ski trip to Alaska. And these same principles apply to generative AI. Vague prompts are like sending a navigator without a precise destination. You might get a result, but it's unlikely to be exactly what you need. So let's explore some fundamental techniques that will improve your interactions with AI tools. And this is regardless of the task that you're working on. So crafting clear prompts isn't just an art, it's more of a systematic approach. And here are some key techniques to develop your prompting skills. So define your objective precisely. What exactly do you want to achieve? Be explicit about the desired outcome. The more precise your objective, the more targeted and useful the AI's response will be. Take a moment to consider exactly what outcome you're seeking before typing your prompt. Provide comprehensive context. Give background information. Explain any special considerations. Share relevant constraints or requirements. AI needs relevant background information to generate appropriate responses. Share the context surrounding your request. This might include previous discussions on the topics or relevant readings or specific approaches you're exploring. This context helps the AI calibrate its response. Specify output parameters like the desired length, the format, the tone, level of detail. Articulate exactly what form you want the response to take. This includes the desired length, so it could be approximately 400 words. The format, you could ask for it to be structured as a comparison table. The tone, you could ask it to use academic language appropriate for a journal. The level of detail, you could say focus on practical applications rather than theoretical foundations. So these specifications act as guidelines that shape the AI's outputs to match your requirements. And lastly, use clear, unambiguous language. So avoid jargon, be specific about terms, and eliminate words with multiple interpretations. So again, precision keeps coming up. Precision in your language leads to precision in results. So avoiding those ambiguous terms and being specific, especially words that might have those multiple interpretations. And Think about things like those vague qualifiers like good or better. Instead of requesting good information about climate change, specify three current scientific consensus points about climate change, supported by findings from peer-reviewed research published since 2020. So this clarity helps ensure that AI understands exactly what you're asking for, eliminates that guesswork. And one other thing to consider is localization. And remember, some words have different meanings in different regions. So consider that too. And just overall, the more guidance you provide, the more precisely AI can serve your needs. So these four techniques sort of form a foundation of effective AI prompting. And by implementing them consistently, you'll notice immediate improvements in the quality and relevance of your AI-generated responses. So just think of these as your basic tools for communicating clearly with AI systems. Okay, so a very basic example of how to transform a vague prompt into a better prompt. So a poor prompt would just be, tell me about life in ancient Rome. Now, I know that I've made this a deliberately vague and broad prompt. It's just for the purpose of this exercise. Now, a better prompt would be write a 300-word overview of daily life in ancient Rome, focusing on the roles of women, slaves, and freedmen, and how their lives differed depending on social class. So you'll notice how the improved prompt adds a specific scope, a clear objective, contextual boundaries, and desired output format. Also notice how I didn't say best prompt. I can guarantee it will be better, but we could still build on this prompt to make it even better. I've heard of some prompts being paragraphs long, and the longest one I've actually heard of so far was 7 pages of text long. So if you have any good prompts that you've used, feel free to share in the chat. As I said, we're not going into technical details today, but there are some limitations on how much you can put into chat windows on AI models, but that's for a different session. Again, it's all about that precision, and it really helps the AI's response be more targeted and useful. And we're not going to show the outputs here today. It's just more about the inputs. So this is just an introduction to how prompting works in practice. So now we know the basics of crafting a prompt. We'll look at tailoring prompts to our audience. So when working with AI tools, one of the most powerful techniques is tailoring your prompts to a specific audience. Now, this means instructing the AI about who will be reading or using its output. Think of it like giving directions to someone writing a letter on your behalf. You'd specify whether it's for a professor, a child, or a technical expert. When you define your audience, the AI adjusts its tone, complexity, and its terminology, and even the examples to match the needs of that audience. So tailoring matters because the same information often needs different presentation depending on audience expertise, and also the purpose of what you're doing and the context of what you're doing. Just remember, the most effective AI outputs match not just what you need, but how your audience needs to receive it. Now, the goal isn't to have AI to do your thinking for you, but rather to help you frame ideas in ways that effectively communicate with your intended audience. So to effectively tailor your prompts, you can start by assessing your audience. What is their knowledge level? What's their purpose for using this information? What context will it apply in? For technical audiences, you might include relevant terminology and request deeper analysis. For general audiences, you might request simplification through analogies and everyday language. For professional contexts, you emphasize that precision and application. And for creative purposes, you'll focus on engagement and inspiration, trying to draw things from people. So always explicitly state the audience and purpose in your prompt. Specifying who the content is for and how they'll use it dramatically improves the relevance of AI-generated content. So how can we do this in practice? This is a little bit of a framework for tailoring to your audience. It's not an official framework. Like most of the ones I show you today aren't official frameworks. There isn't really one official framework. So these are just tools to help you out. It's not the only solution either, but this is just the one that I found very useful, and you can modify and build from this as well. So for this activity, let's pretend that we're promoting a digital support service for people aged over 50 trying to access online government services. So identify your audience. Who are we trying to communicate or reach? So for my example, it would be for people age over 50. The purpose statement. What is the purpose of what we're trying to do? So my example, we have over 50s who need support accessing online government services. The knowledge assumption. What do we know about the audience knowledge levels? So my example here is we know that these people over 50 need help accessing online government services. They have limited knowledge of digital technology. So that's a knowledge assumption. And then a format specification. What would we like the output to look like? And now I'm doing a promotional thing, so I'm going to make it a one-page handout flyer. And the tone guidance. How will the AI speak or write? So because it's a casual audience, we're going to use a casual tone that people over 50 can understand. So I've identified my whole audience, provided that to the AI, and it will adjust its outputs with that in mind. So you can find out more about tailoring AI prompts and other methods, such as giving AI a persona and other methods listed on the slide in that existing masterclass in generative AI that we previously shared. You can find using the QR code or link in the chat previously shared. You can also just search University of Adelaide Library AI, how do I guide, and put that in your favorites and bookmarks. It's a very useful guide that we have there. So I highly recommend that you view this masterclass on screen alongside this prompting webinar, because the more you learn, the better you'll be. And there's no one particular solution. So just learning as much as you can and applying it to your own context is crucial. Okay, so let's look at bringing all this together and structuring our prompts effectively. We're now going to look at some frameworks that you can apply to your AI prompting. Again, excuse me. Again, these aren't official frameworks, but they are ones that I have found useful in my own AI prompting, and I've learned through various AI trainings that I've attended. You might gravitate towards one more than the other. It's almost a personal preference type thing, and I wouldn't necessarily say one is better than the other. AI prompting is so contextual that you'll know what works best for your purpose. I don't believe there is an official standard in this space, but rather just good guidance and good practices. So I'll show these frameworks, then an example of a prompt using each framework. We have 4 to cover, so we'll get through these. So our first framework is the GCSE framework, and it provides a structured approach to crafting comprehensive prompts. So G is goal. This is where you clearly define what you want the AI to achieve, what you want to achieve with the AI's response. So being specific about your objective helps the AI understand the purpose of your request. C is context. Here you provide the relevant background information to frame the request. This could include your audience, the current knowledge level, or the situation more broadly. Source, this component, it specifies any reference materials or knowledge base that the AI should use or prioritize in formulating its response. So you can actually provide a source of information to the AI in order to say, this is kind of what I'm looking at, or this is how I would like it to look, by making sure that you're not uploading anything that breaches copyright or any privacy or anything like that too. Remember, public AI tools will often put this information into its data set. So I really recommend that you be careful about what you do use as a source. Expectation. So finally, you detail the format, the tone, the length, and other specific requirements for the response. So this framework works particularly well when you need a precisely tailored response that adheres to specific parameters. And we'll show some of these. Let's show an example of it. So these slides will get a bit text heavy, just because the nature of prompting. But as mentioned, if you miss anything today, the recording will be shared, so you can slow it down and have a better look at it then. This is an example using GCSE. The task here is to create a briefing on a bushfire preparedness for a regional South Australian community. So you'll notice how each component guides the AI towards producing a response that's more tailored to our needs. The goal clearly states what we need. The context helps the AI understand the situation. The source directs what information to use, and the expectation specifies the exact format and style needed. It provides you with a great structure for prompting rather than leaving things open for speculation. And that increases the chances of those hallucinations we showed before. So one thing to note here is that I did mention that you could include specific links to sources of information for source. It does help eliminate possible confusion rather than it going and searching for a source itself. Because it's been provided a source, it eliminates another barrier for it. But again, I just really stress that privacy and copyright still applies here, and you shouldn't be uploading sensitive information to public AI tools. And that might include like things like your course readings and stuff like that. Certainly it will apply to textbooks and so on. So keep that in mind. So our next framework is clear. Again, sorry for the text heaviness, but it's just the only way we can do this one. So you'll note that there are similar themes throughout these frameworks, and you probably note there's been some similar themes throughout this whole session. But you're probably going to personally gravitate towards one more than the other, and you can mix and match too. So the CLEAR framework helps you craft prompts that lead to structured, thoughtful, and balanced responses. It's especially useful for academic, reflective, or analytical tasks. So what it asks us to do is be concise, keep your prompt focused, strip out unnecessary fluff so the AI knows exactly what to prioritize. Think quality over quantity in wording. Logical, organize your prompt in a clear step-by-step way. A logical flow helps the AI follow your thinking and respond in an equally structured manner. Explicit, be clear about what you want. Don't leave room for guesswork. Specify the format, depth, examples, or perspective that you're after. Adaptive. So write prompts that are flexible depending on the context. So this is useful when you're refining your request or applying it to a different context. So yeah, and using these frameworks will really help you keep these prompts adaptive. And reflective. So encourage the AI to consider quality or evaluate multiple viewpoints. And this supports critical thinking and reduces one-sided responses. Some of this is happening naturally in some more advanced AI models, but it's still important for you to do that too. So I guess this framework shines when you want well-structured, thoughtful responses that demonstrate some depth without excessive length. And the reflective component particularly helps in generating those balanced perspectives. It is based off a journal article, which you can locate via the link in the chat, and also you can search using in the footer there. So we'll do an example of how this applies to a real prompt. The task is clear, so we're concise. The task is clear. Create a one-page summary of recent AI advancements in healthcare. It's focus, no extra instructions to confuse the AI. Logical, the structure is built in. We ask it to begin with diagnostic applications and then move to treatment innovations and end with ethical considerations. So it gives the AI a bit of a roadmap to follow. Explicit, we're not vague about what kind of content we want. We specifically request examples of machine learning detecting early stage cancers, including accuracy rates. So the precision, again, improves that relevance. Adaptive, we've made the summary suitable for both technical and non-technical audiences, and that flexibility will help the AI adjust its tone and complexity. Again, we mentioned about tailoring to your audience before. And finally, reflective, we prompt the AI to include both the benefits and limitations of each technology, and this encourages a more critical, balanced response, not just hype. So using clear in this way doesn't just get a better answer, it gets the right kind of answer for your purpose and your audience. So these next two frameworks I'm going to show you just as we get towards the end of the session are generally used for other purposes, but can also be applied to AI prompting as well. So the Peel framework is traditionally used in education to help structure analytical paragraphs, especially in subjects like English, history, or social sciences. It stands for point, evidence, explanation, and link. And it really encourages clear, logical, and well-supported thinking. You can look at the link in order to see in the chat that's been provided, you can see how it applies to essay writing. But when we think about prompting AI, we can actually use Peel in two ways. First, we can ask the AI to structure its response or output using Peel. That is to make a clear point, to support it with evidence, to explain how the evidence connects and link to the original point. So this helps avoid those shallow or disjointed answers. Now, again, just stressing that AI doesn't actually know what it is saying is true or not. We've shown the hallucination example, so it's no guarantee that it will get it right. You still need to be aware of the topic in order to critically assess it. You can't just not know anything about a topic and use these frameworks and go, yep, problem solved. You have to have some level of knowledge to actually assess it critically. So I also think Peel is a useful prompting strategy by itself in isolation. So if you structure your prompts using Peel, you give the AI context, direction, and purpose. So you can see those themes coming up again, right? Bit of direction, context, purpose. So let's look at it. For example, we start by stating what we want to understand, the point. We provide some background or constraints to guide the model, evidence. We explain what kind of reasoning or depth we need. That's the explanation. And finally, describe how we intend to use the output. We can link it to a broader purpose. In Peel, it's actually linking back to your original point, but in AI prompting, we can link it to what we've mentioned here. So it's a very simple structure, but it helps generate clearer, more relevant, more usable responses, especially for tasks that require explanation or critical thinking. So here's an example of the Peel method used as a prompt. In this case, I'm looking at the benefits of meditation for stress reduction. So we have a clear topic and intention, some grounding in evidence. Now, I probably would have included the actual study here for evidence, but that's okay for this example. A reason to explain, not just lists, so explain how these benefits occur, and a context to tailor its output. So it's a beginner-friendly workplace stress focus. So again, like I said, for the evidence part, you could actually provide an information source like a public report or openly accessible information to the AI to assist with this output. But just really stressing those points again, that you shouldn't be uploading anything that might breach copyright or the privacy of others. Even your course readings and that could be under copyright. Publicly available reports and websites and other information, open access information are best for this. Okay, our last framework for today is the STAR framework. So the STAR framework is actually best known as an interview technique for job interviews. So it's used to help people structure clear, concise responses when asked about past experiences. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. It helps a speaker tell a complete story and one that's easy to follow and evaluate. So situation, this is where you describe the current scenario or problem you're facing. Task, here you specify what needs to be accomplished to address the situation. Action, this component basically indicates what approach or methodology the AI should take. And result, finally, you define the desired outcome and success criteria for the response. And again, just like the previous one, I found that STAR can be really helpful in two ways. First, much like Peel, we can ask the AI to respond using the STAR framework, especially when we want it to generate stories, case studies, or reflective writing. For example, we might prompt it to explain how a teacher handled a disruptive student using the STAR framework. It will tell us the situation, the task, the action, and the result. And it just ensures that the response is structured, grounded, and complete. But again, much like Peel, STAR works great in isolation as a prompting strategy. So when you structure your prompts using STAR, you're going to guide that model through a scenario a bit more effectively. You can describe a specific situation or a task. So what needs to be done or solved, the action, what kind of steps or responses we want from the AI, and the result, what kind of output or outcome we're hoping for. Drink. So it makes STAR quite useful for simulating decision making, exploring case-based learning, or asking the AI to reflect on behavior and outcomes in complex contexts, whether that's professional development, teaching practice, or workplace scenarios. Excuse me. Excuse me. So we're looking at the STAR framework now in action. It's a great choice for when you're focused on problem solving or driving practical outcomes. We're using a scenario here of a marketing team that's dealing with declining engagement. So we have a situation, we start by getting the context. The marketing team is struggling with declining email open rates. This helps the AI understand the challenge we're addressing. Task. Next, we need to define the goal. So the task is we need to create subject lines that increase engagement. And this is a clear objective that helps focus the AI's response. The action, here's what we guide the AI on what to do, analyze what makes subject lines compelling, and generate 5 variations for our product launch email. And this ensures we get both insightful and useful outputs. And finally, for the result, we specify the desired outcome. Like each subject line should be under 50 characters and evoke curiosity without sounding like clickbait. So it really helps the AI align its suggestion with any required tone or real world constraints. So STAR works especially well in business strategy or operational tasks, any situation where you're trying to improve, innovate, or fix something. So we're getting right towards the end here. I'm mindful that we're getting close to time, but when to use each framework, we're just going to bring it all together. Now, there is no one, this fits this situation, but this is just my little rundown of it. So it's very text heavy again, so apologies. So GCSE is probably your go-to for depth and precision. Ideal when the quality really matters, like technical content, expert level explanations, or structured writing tasks. Clear really shines when you want balanced, thoughtful responses with a clear structure. It's especially effective for things like analytical writing or anything where depth without waffle is important. STAR is built for action. You use it when you're solving problems, improving processes, or driving towards a specific outcome. It's great for business planning or strategy. PEEL is perfect for persuasive or critical writing. If you need to build a strong argument, compare options, or take a position on an issue, this is the structure that I would use there. So each of these frameworks acts like a different lens and helping you to shape AI's responses depending on what you're trying to achieve. The better your prompt fits the purpose, the better the result. Like I said, these aren't official frameworks or the only way to prompt, but using these frameworks will set you up for better outputs and give you that foundation. Okay, just to wrap up, let's revisit what makes a good AI prompt. The most important principle is clarity. Be specific about what you want and why. Giving context helps the model avoid guessing or going off track. You can also shape the response by specifying tone, format, and depth. Frameworks can really help structure both your prompts and the AI's output in more useful ways. You can even develop your own structure and frameworks for your own specific context. You don't have to just follow exactly what I've said here today. So on the flip side of that, poor prompts will lead to poor outputs. If your question's too broad or lacks context or is open to misinterpretation, the AI is more than likely to generate something generic or even worse, incorrect. So complex requests especially benefit from structure, and always consider the audience. Is it a professional? Is it yourself? Even a small amount of guidance in the prompt can significantly improve the usefulness of its answer. So think of prompting as a skill that gets better with practice. It's not about finding one magic formula, but it's about learning how to iterate, to test and refine based on your goals and context. Don't be afraid to mix and match these frameworks or just try and develop your own framework. Those logical thinkers are really good at developing their own frameworks. And, share with other people when you create a good one or you come across a good one. I think sharing these things really gets people, people unaware. You'll be amazed at what people aren't aware of. Just don't forget the critical thinking either. Even the great prompts need great judgment. And I need to stress this reminder again. I stressed it at the top and I'm going to stress it again. You may not even be able to use AI in your academic work. So check with your course coordinator, explore those academic integrity resources that we shared earlier on, and ensure your work is your own and in line with any guidelines. So just looping back to close off the loop of what we promised to deliver today, we did a broad introduction to prompting. We looked at what constitutes a clear and specific prompt. We covered tailoring prompts to audiences. And lastly, we finished with some prompting frameworks to assist you with your AI prompting. So the main aim of today was to try and give you some basic AI prompting skills that you can take away and then apply to your relevant context. We know how this is not a one solution for everything, but rather just a session to give you some tools and get you thinking and start building that literacy. So for further information, you can contact me via this email address. It will go through our CRM, but it will make its way to me. This webinar will be recorded and posted in our AI How Do I guide, like I've mentioned multiple times. So you will be able to come back and access it whenever or recommend it to others who couldn't make it today. If there are teaching staff online here who'd like to explore other AI literacy sessions, whether it's for a specific cohort or not, please get in contact. But that is it. We've done pretty well to get to this point. We are open for questions, but we'd definitely love for you to share some feedback using the QR code, or you can use that QR code to even potentially suggest any other sessions you might be interested in when it comes to AI literacy. So thank you. And I'm going to come back and have a look at the chat now, and we will keep it open. Okay, I'm just going to go back to the top of the chat and work my way through. So apologies, everyone. If you'd like to hang around, you can. Of interest. Yeah, Laura, there's tons of hallucinated references. Hallucinations are actually quite fun because they just show the limitations, I think, and it makes you feel better about some of your own, even AI makes mistakes, a robot makes mistakes, just like we do a little bit. So is there a clear understanding of how much access ChatGPT has to all the other content on your smartphone if you use the app? Does it track your use of or learn? Is it? Good question. Is it possible to have the app but completely restrict its access to your data? I think when it comes to things like that, you have to really look at the terms of service of the tool that you're using. Sometimes they can be a little bit vague, but that's the best. A lot of people don't read terms of service these days, but you'll find some really interesting content in there, like things like where is the data being hosted and so on. But I think that's something you might have to do a little bit more research on about specifically how much data it is taking from you. Ace, are there differences in the ChatGPT model or based on the type of subscriptions and quality of its answers? Yes and no. What I will say is that if we certainly don't promote paid access, but I have noticed personally the logged out version of ChatGPT versus a logged in version might give you access to a different model, a more advanced model, which likely improves the quality of its answers, but still falls into the same traps that we're seeing here that I've shown off today. Oh, Eddie, thanks, Eddie, for answering that. That's fantastic. You can see that Eddie's given you that. So yeah, he's done some research into the background details. So yeah, that's what it's all about, doing that research. And I can see Pedro, yes, if you pay, you have access to more advanced models. Yeah, look, we don't encourage people to pay because some of these models just actually have the same issues regardless anyway. I think they're still not quite, they are getting better, but they're still not quite out of the woods in that sense. Rachel, yes, that's one thing I could say. Microsoft Copilot has a prompt gallery that you can use, which is similar to templates in Word, 100%. So you can see some pre-existing effective prompts that are being put there. So for us, it's really today about you generating and building your own prompts. However, there is loads of information, and I think you'll see even on that where I shared the GCSE information, Microsoft have a whole bunch of information in there as well. No, Tim, you don't actually have to write goal, context, or, you don't actually have to write those words. It's more just to give you that framework to work within. You can just think about it when you're doing what is my goal, what is my context. You don't have to actually write it. You can if you want. You don't have to do that with any of them either. So I just wanted to show you how I'd applied that in practice. Yeah, we'll resend. Yeah, we'll have all the kind of, yeah, we'll send you the links and everything as well. Thank you. Or we'll get you the information. We've got QR codes, yeah, and we've got QR codes as well that you can access too. So yeah, I'll have to just see if I can share the PowerPoint as well. Let me look at the approval for that too. But in saying that, it will be posted on the library's webpage as well. Could I slow the GC? Yep. I will come back to that, Rowan. Just one moment. Yeah, they are, Kim. They're really good frameworks, whether you use AI or not. Like, and I stress that you can, things like Peel is literally about essay writing. So these are just good frameworks that I found helpful as well. Excellent. Thank you. Just thank yous. Maza, I don't suggest any AI tool for academic purposes. I don't endorse any specific tool. I really encourage you just to see what level of AI use is acceptable for your course, if it is acceptable at all. Some things are actually assessing your own knowledge on a topic. So that's why you can't use it in some cases. But you'll see there's different levels to how you might be able to use it. So do I think Copilot and ChatGPT results are somewhat different? Yes and no. I think all models are a little bit different sometimes. Again, I don't want to, I'm not really in a position to be able to endorse specific tools here today, unfortunately. I'd love to provide you with more context, but yes, I agree that different models provide different levels of output. Sanaz, I know you mentioned Gemini there. I don't want to recommend, unfortunately, I can't recommend using, I can't really do anything that is seen as an endorsement of these tools, unfortunately. Thank you very much for the feedback. I really appreciate it. So if you have no more questions, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. And yeah, like I said, get in contact with us if you can, if you have any further questions and you'd like to have a different webinar too. Thank you, everyone.